All right, so hello, bonjour, and as the Snuneymuxw, Salish First Nation say, Ichoayo. And that last one means, are you doing well? And it is upon the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw that Nanaimo is located. And it was in Nanaimo that our guest today was born and raised. My name is Chris Ford, hailing to you from sunny Saskatoon. And I'm hosting this Young Citizens of the World, Jeunes Citoyens du Monde interview with Minister Brenda Bailey. But first up, I would like to invite Senator Tony Lafrida, who's a wonderful supporter of ours, to make a few opening remarks.
Thank you, everyone, and always a pleasure, an honor and a privilege to be here. And Minister Bailey, welcome to the Young Citizens of the World. I've been a champion from the very beginning, and it's always excellent and very insightful for the students. So good afternoon, everyone, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to this important session. As students and future leaders, you are at a critical point in your development where the opportunity to engage with political leaders and learn about governance and policy making is invaluable. Life at its core is about people, our relationships, our communities, and the ways we support each other. Similarly, policy and government are fundamentally about people. The decisions we make as leaders must always reflect the needs, values, and aspirations of those we serve. And as you explore the intricacies of governance, I encourage you to remember that every policy impacts lives, families, and communities. Today's session offers you the chance to not only learn about governance, but to reflect on the importance of empathy, inclusivity, and collaboration in shaping policies that truly make a difference. Ask questions, share your insights, and consider how your own engagement can contribute to the building of a better future, a better Canada for everyone. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. Looking forward to the session.
Thank you, Senator Lafrida. I love your passion and the devotion that you share with students and bring to these meetings. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
Minister Bailey is the member of the Legislative Assembly of the Province of British Columbia, representing Vancouver False Creek. And she has certainly been on a fascinating journey over the course of her lifetime so far, from Nanaimo to False Creek, despite it only being a 2.5-hour trip. So I thought instead of a lengthy intro to get to know you, we would do a brief trivia quiz and test your knowledge about yourself. So, are you game?
I am.
Excellent. So, question 1 about Minister Bailey for Minister Bailey. What was your first video game company of which you were a co-founder?
My first video game studio was called Deep Fried Entertainment, founded here in Vancouver.
Excellent. Correct answer. Very good. And bonus point if you can tell us the first game system you played as a child.
Oh, this is interesting. I played very many game systems as a child, but it was probably the SNES, the Nintendo system. Yeah.
Very good. I have no idea if that's correct, but I am giving you the point because it comes from a reliable source. So, my next question, did you or did you not found the first video game studio called Silicon Sisters that created high quality games for women and girls?
I did indeed.
Excellent. Amazing. And I'll give you another bonus for having worked for the Canadian Cancer Society.
Thank you.
My final quiz question here, and this one will blow the minds of some of our audience members. Are you or are you not the minister, the Jedi minister?
I am the Jedi minister. And for a kid who grew up on a small island and saw Star Wars as the first movie I ever saw when I was 10, I can't tell you how much fun it is to be the Jedi minister.
Nice. I was 6 when I first saw it. But so you are, and just to explain, that's the Minister of Jobs, Economic Development, and Innovation.
Correct.
So I think the audience might have thought I meant something else, but it looks like you scored a fabulous 5 out of 3 on this trivia test about you, so superior performance. And quickly in passing, a bit of sad news as the voice of Darth Vader, the legendary James Earl Jones, passed away yesterday, and he is in our thoughts as he enters his cornfield in the sky in a galaxy far, far away. So we had better get to our real questions. We know the time is tight for this minister who reportedly works 14 hours a day, 6 days a week to improve the province for the people of British Columbia, and particularly in the realm of innovation. And I never knew there was such a ministry, so I find that very exciting. So real question 1 for Minister Bailey. Last year I was teaching social studies and we were talking about businesses going bankrupt during the pandemic and how that caused job loss and even homelessness. So we were wondering, what are some of the ways your ministry, the Jedi ministry, Jobs, Economic Development, and Innovation, how is it helping small businesses recover and grow, especially after the pandemic?
Thank you very much for the question. The first thing I'll mention is that we invested heavily in businesses during the pandemic, small businesses in particular. We had grants available to them that could help them get through the pandemic. We also made training available to them so that they could take their traditional brick and mortar business and bring it online and do their trade online. Put many thousands of business people through that training, and I've met with a number of them who've had tremendous success taking their business from brick and mortar to an online business, which has continued to this day. So during the pandemic, that was the approach that we took. We've continued to be supportive of small businesses because after the pandemic, things continued to be challenging for them. We've seen international factors like increases in inflation and the rise of interest rates have huge impacts on these businesses. I mean, you can imagine that many of them during the pandemic, when their access to selling to whatever their product was to their consumers became restricted, many of them took out loans in order to get through what they thought would be a short period. What happened, of course, was then the interest rates went up. And all of a sudden, the cost of carrying those loans became very, very difficult for them. We also saw supply chain challenges. And what happened there was it became more difficult to get the products that they needed to do their business and more expensive. So we're seeing a number of things hit our small business community at the same time. We've been able to provide some tax relief to our small businesses through changing the tax structure in something called our EHT, an employee health tax, and a number of other different programs that we put in place to support small businesses.
Very nice. And I also heard about you could take some modules online, about 400 courses to get training. I thought that was pretty interesting too.
Yes.
Very cool. So we are now going to move towards teacher Tiara Glover, who's in the Empire State. That's right, Syracuse, New York. With question 2.
It is an honor, Minister Bailey. Thank you so much. My question is, British Columbia is known for the tech industry, and as you are the Jedi Minister, what steps are you taking to encourage that innovation and keep British Columbia a top place for tech and new ideas?
Thank you very much, Tara, for the question. There's a lot of work going on in this file. One of the most important things about the tech industry is making sure that you have talented people that can access the training that they need to work in the tech sector. And we want that training available to everyone from every background. The tech sector historically has been largely a male-dominated field. That was my experience when I worked in it in the early 2000s. So we're investing in training programs that provide training to people who've been underrepresented as well. I just came from an announcement of $4 million going towards that type of training so that tech is made by people that represent the same people that use tech. I think this is very, very important and something that's really, really key in British Columbia. We're also investing broadly in training programs. We've invested in 6,000 new technology seats at university, things like data scientists and folks that are doing biopharmaceutical work, many, many other categories. We've also just attracted what's referred to as the Olympics of Tech. This is a big conference called Web Summit. It's offered around the world, and we'll be hosting the only one in North America in Vancouver in May 2024, next summer, 2025. So what's exciting about that is that it attracts about 30,000 people into Vancouver who can learn about the incredible things that are happening in our tech sector in British Columbia. It allows us to shine a light on the work that's being done here. And it also, very importantly, attracts investors that are looking to make investments in technology. BC Technology is particularly well known for focusing on sustainability in these challenging days facing climate change. And we know there are many investors that are going to be really interested in the work that's happening here in British Columbia.
Thank you.
Very nice. I knew innovation was exciting. And, you talk about pharmaceuticals, and I think I heard you say in another interview, it could be as big as the Saskatchewan economy entirely. So That's just amazing. All the opportunities that are there.
Mm-hmm.
Our third and final question for Minister Bailey comes from teacher Vero Lopez from the beautiful forest city, London, Ontario. So I think the next question is très à propos, and it is coming from, I believe, one of her children. Forgotten which one.
I'm here with Isabella.
Hi, Minister Bailey.
Hi, Isabella.
Hi. We are on a journey this season 5 to meet leaders from every province and territory in Canada. Here's a question we'd like to ask everyone. What makes your home province of British Columbia a special, beautiful, and desirable place for families from across Canada and the world to visit and consider living?
Thanks, Isabella. What a great question. You asked it perfectly. Well done. Well, I'm really proud of all of Canada, and I've had the opportunity to travel to every province, and I've also been up to the territories. So I have to say that we're very lucky here in Canada that we've got many beautiful places. I'm particularly in love with British Columbia because I'm crazy about whales, and we've got lots of different kinds of whales that I can see when I'm out kayaking, if you can imagine. But in my job working on the economy, one of the things I find really exciting is that we have an economy that's the same economy that maybe you would have seen 100 years ago, things like forestry and mining and fisheries and agriculture. But it's being really changed by what we're doing in modern times, which is building all kinds of technology. And we're applying it to that old economy, our new tools to the old economy. And I find that really interesting and really exciting. And there's a lot of great work happening in British Columbia on that area.
Very cool. It's wonderful the way you can blend the old and the new and take people's unique talents and help them contribute to society. Minister Bailey, we are so grateful for your time, and you're making time today for us, especially with the provincial election coming up, like in Saskatchewan, having that election at the end of October. We really appreciate your work ethic, your integrity, and your commitment to connecting with youth citizens and helping them see some of the innovative paths that they might venture down in the future. If you have any colleagues or others that are looking to further enhance the civic engagement with youth, we welcome any and all invitations and introductions. Just putting that out there. And as they say goodbye in the Snuneymuxw, hey yewach. And as a teacher who taught his first career education class today for the year, I wonder if you have any closing thoughts for the students listening to you today.
What I would say to the students that are listening today is that it's so exciting to think about what the future holds. I think it's really important to think about the big challenges in front of us and how we can tackle them differently. I know there's lots of smart kids listening, and if you think about what you really care about, what's the piece that you can contribute? And how does that look in the future? So for me, I always loved video games. I made video game studios. Then I realized there weren't enough women in technology and people from different backgrounds in technology. And I've been working on changing that. And I think it's important to get to do work that's really meaningful to you. I found that work really meaningful, and I see positive change, and I think the world's going to be better for it. So I encourage people to think in that way. What can you do that's important to you?
Tremendous words of advice. All right, everyone. Time to bid adieu to Brenda Bailey, Minister Bailey, and say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
tout le monde.
Have a good day. Thank you, everybody.
Grizzly. So it's all about the bear just taking the bath and the sulfur baths.
Cool.
Good answer. All right. Y'all ready to roll?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we can get going here. All right. And now, jeunes citoyens du monde, young citizens of the world, today we have the splendid honor of interviewing the Honorable Mike Farnworth. Minister Farnworth has been representing Port Coquitlam, POCO, as I learned it's called, for the better part of 33 years, other than some time in the Balkans and Iraq, where he's helping to spread democracy. Good on ya. For those who did not know, Terry Fox used to live in Port Coquitlam, but while representing the region, Minister Farnworth has been one strong fighter for justice in the BC legislature. You do not want him criticizing your portfolio. I can tell you he's a tough debater. Over the course of his career, he has been earning greater and greater responsibilities as a result, including being in charge of public safety, attaining the position of Solicitor General, the person responsible for matters relating to policing and corrections, and as of October 2021, Minister Farnworth has been the provincial number 2, that is the Deputy Premier. Quite an honor, quite a responsibility. So our first question today for the minister comes from teacher Vero Lopez of London, Ontario, a city very much in keeping with Terry Fox, as the motto of London is Labore et Perseverantia. Pardon my Latin pronunciation, but meaning through labor and perseverance. So you can see the connection there. So question 1, Vero and her son, Omar.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm here with my son, Omar. Go ahead.
Hi, Deputy Premier Farnworth. As the Solicitor General, you play a critical role in overseeing public safety and law enforcement in British Columbia. Many of us are experiencing or hearing stories about unsafe situations across Vancouver and beyond, such as mental health, homelessness, gang violence, and random attacks. Can you explain how your role as Solicitor General helps address these concerns and what specific measures are being taken to address these problems?
No, thank you, and that's a really great question. So my role as Solicitor General is responsible for policing and corrections and what's called the Police Act, which governs municipal police, such as the Vancouver Police Department or the Victoria Police Department in British Columbia, along with the RCMP, which is also governed by federal legislation. And so my job is to ensure a number of things. One, that police work under that Police Act, that they have the resources that they need to be able to do that job. Even though policing is a municipal responsibility, there is also a provincial oversight part. I'm also responsible for what's called the police complaints process for municipal police forces, the Independent Investigations Office, which looks after and investigates if there has been an issue involving a police officer or police officers related to for a shooting, for example, where they may be involved. So that's the broad area. In terms of the safety aspect, and there have been a lot of concerns about different kinds of attacks that have taken place, or people not feeling safe in their communities, and these are often seen on the media. We take them very seriously. But first I want to set some context, and that is crime by and large has been going down, and our communities are safe, and our streets are safe. Whether it's in British Columbia or Ontario or anywhere in Canada, we are a very safe country, but crime does happen. And so we want to ensure that police have the tools that they need to be able to solve those crimes. And this is where the province can and does provide a number of initiatives to do just that. So, for example, in many parts of rural British Columbia and small towns in British Columbia, populations under 5,000, the responsibility for policing lies with the province. And so we have invested just over 2 years ago now the largest single investments in hiring of RCMP officers in the history of the province, some 256 officers to be hired to help policing in small towns, but also on specialized policing teams. And those are highway patrol to deal with speeders, for example, who cause accidents. The independent child exploitation unit, which deals with criminals who want to target young people and engage, and which is, using the internet and things like that, which is something that we are very concerned about. This morning just happened to be at a forum on that with police. The other area that we also want to is major crime unit, for example. So those are some investments in policing. Other things that we have done, a witness security program to be able to tackle gang violence. Previously in British Columbia, we had to rely on the federal program, which was fine, but it didn't meet the needs of our province. And so we put in place a witness security program, which has allowed police to look at unsolved cases, to deal with gang members, and to be able to get them to cooperate in solving crimes, and they have been successful. And a number of people have now been sent to jail who committed very violent crimes that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to solve because we did not have a witness security program that worked. At the same time, we also recognize one of the most important things is prevention and education. And this is especially true when it comes to gangs and criminal violence involving gangs, who often target, vulnerable young people, who often try and lure them into the gang lifestyle. And so we've been investing very much on the prevention side with our school districts, for example, and gang exiting programs for those who find themselves involved in the gang lifestyle. I could go on and on and on, but I know that you do have other questions, and if there's anything else on this you want me to answer, I'm more than happy to.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Minister Farnworth. I do hope that you have a lot of success in those innovations and initiatives, and if you're able to replicate those across the country to help homelessness or other aspects. I know in my classroom we talk about Hannah Taylor. Have you ever heard of Hannah Taylor of Winnipeg? And the Ladybug Foundation, and how she began and eventually raised money up to $4 million to help homeless people. And there's a documentary on the National Film Board that I recommend to all teachers to check out. I'm hoping to get every school in Canada aware of just how much kids can be doing and how much students can do to improve their cities. And I would love to see closer ties between the governments and these wonderful kids who can make a positive difference. And so these initiatives that you're talking about, getting involved with education, I think that's a really big deal. And I think that's something that we should encourage to continue to grow.
And just on that, you're absolutely right. And you reminded me of the other part of the question, which is the mental health side of things. And that is increasingly important. Police tell us all the time that they're trained to be police, they're not mental health workers. And they too often are dealing with mental health situations, which is why I'll just briefly mention a couple of other initiatives that have been put in place. One is called the CAR program. And so if police become aware of a situation that's called in, they can now send mental health workers to assess the situation, and it can often be addressed by a mental health worker as opposed to police having to be called out to a particular situation. It was piloted in New Westminster and North Vancouver, and that was a peer assisted care team. But the CAR program is been expanded to other communities, and at the same time, the peer assisted care team is able to do that assessment. And we are putting that into other communities across the province. So mental health is a critical and key component increasingly of how we deal with the issue of public safety on our streets. And obviously that involves things such as housing and supportive housing that's required by people. But raising these issues in the schools is absolutely fundamentally, I think, a positive way to bring about change, but also to raise awareness when kids go home and talk to their parents.
Absolutely. And when kids feel like they can do something, guess what? That has a great feeling on their mental health and stuff like that. you have to deal with all sorts of safety issues. And this summer, we watched some troubling images that were difficult to see. And it was with the wildfires and the floods that were deeply affecting the BC communities, and as well as communities across Canada. But in particular, Jasper, Alberta, we saw was hit. So we're wondering about things like, how is the government preparing to protect communities in BC, and what support can people expect if they are affected?
No, that's a really great question, and something over the last number of years we've had to deal with literally almost every year. And so we've dealt with the fires, but we also had a few years ago the significant atmospheric river storm that came through and cut off all the major routes, including railways, all but one into the Lower Mainland. So first and foremost has been a reform of the Emergencies Act that we had in British Columbia. The previous act had been put in place in 1993, and it was modeled on a federal statute from the late 60s. So we have gone out and done a significant rewrite and update of that legislation. We've done it in consultation with experts in the field of disasters, local governments, as well as in our Indigenous partners, because so many Indigenous communities are in fact impacted by wildfires and disasters. The result is a piece of legislation now that is incredibly up to date and modern, and is built on the principles of what's called the Sendai framework, based on the United Nations conference in Japan a number of years ago around how to manage disaster. Too often in the past, it was based on the principle of response and recovery. And now we need to look at disasters in a much more holistic approach, understanding the nature of climate change. And that means understanding the risk and mitigating the risk, as well as response and recovery. And one of the key factors in terms of legislation is about, you don't just put back what was there, but build back better. So in the case of floods, if part of the problem was that you had roads or culverts that weren't built to standard, and I'll just say, for example, you had a 12-inch culvert, and the reality is from the stream flow, it should have been, a 24-inch culvert. Put back a 24-inch culvert. It means putting greater emphasis on understanding that nature of the risk. So, for example, we're investing more in seeing what the topography of the land is, using LiDAR so that we can get a better sense of what areas are prone to flooding, what are the historical dimensions in the past of floodplains, for example, and understanding slope stability. Because what we've seen with the fires is they were so intense, they were burning down through the organic layer that normally would have survived, right down to literally either the bedrock or just rock underneath, and which triggers landslides and mudslides. So all of those things help us to understand the nature of the risk. We've extended, recognizing that fires now the fire season is lasting longer. We've made the firefighting force now year-round, as opposed to just during the fire season. Doing more on-the-ground prevention, such as fuel control, understanding the nature and identifying which communities are at risk, and also making it better to know who's got responsibility, who has the so, for example, as the Solicitor General, the person or the minister who's in charge of emergency management is the one who calls a province-wide state of emergency. But then at the local level, the local governments also have the power to call it a state of emergency. But we've also needed to recognize that Indigenous nations and their communities also have that ability to, and they have that right, and that is now enshrined in the legislation to be able to do that. It means ensuring that we know when an evacuation has to take place, that we've got the designated areas where people are able to be evacuated to. Again, it depends on the nature of the fire, but ensuring that, whether it's Prince George or Kelowna, Williams Lake, Fort St. John, they have the ability and the capacity and the volunteers to be able to accept people when they are told to evacuate. It means having the warning systems in place. It's a whole range of things that we're working on that have been implemented. And it's also important to know we have a tremendous system in this country of help and cooperation. So we have in Winnipeg the National Fire Center, which coordinates if we need help with our fires from, say, Alberta or Ontario or Quebec or the Maritime, wherever. They're able to coordinate the sending of firefighters to British Columbia to assist. And likewise, if other provinces need help from us, they coordinate that way. We also have reciprocal agreements with other nations. So, for example, when it's summertime here in Canada, it's winter in Australia and New Zealand. And so they will often send up their firefighters to assist us. And likewise, we will send firefighters down there to assist them when they're having, because they also can have terrible fires down in Australia, which we often see on the news. And of course, with our neighbor to the south in the United States. Work is done. We're coming to the end of the fire season now here in British Columbia over the next number of weeks, but planning for next year starts literally right away, trying to line up, aircraft and on the resources, the physical resources that are needed, but also working on the state of the ground in our province, understanding what areas of the province are in drought, what's the moisture content in the ground itself, which will give you and what's the snowpack like in the spring. All of those things go into understanding and preparing for a flood season and for a fire season.
It makes so many connections to what I was thinking about. My brother-in-law works in highways. My wife works with the Water Security Agency and watersheds. And I had a student today who was telling me he wants to be a fireman. So there's just so many of those connections. And earlier we were talking to Minister Bailey about innovation. And, you think of all the ways that we can make connections there. So Deputy Farnworth, we have learned a great deal from you today. We have a better understanding of the crucial roles played by the Solicitor General, as well as the Deputy Premier, and as well as what is involved with taking care and being in charge of safety in a province, as well as the initiatives that you take to overcome disasters and challenges, but also think about bringing forth renewal, building back better, and the opportunities for the future. So it has been wonderful to spend time with you today, and we know you're very busy, coming with the election coming up at the end of the month, just like here in Saskatchewan. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to meet you and talk with you all. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.